This is Creativity Drill with Dr. Don and Jonathan Rundman.
Good day, listeners. Welcome to Creativity Drill. Our host is me and Don. And our guest is photographer and globetrotter Jason DeBose. Now, it's possible that this episode could motivate you to buy a plane ticket. We'll see how it goes. Thanks for tuning in, and coming up right now, our conversation with photographer Jason DeBose.
All right, well, let's do it. Hey, everybody. Hey, listeners. We have Jason DeBose from Pasadena, California. Isn't that... what? Isn't that true? Aren't you from Pasadena?
I am.
Well, this is exciting for me and, well, for Dawn, too, because we've never had a photographer on the show. And listeners, if you hear that noise, that means Jason is shooting images here of the podcast process as we go. And I've known Jason for a few years, and I must say I've never seen him without his camera, and I've never seen him not shooting. And so this podcast is kind of going to fold in on itself as a Mobius strip of audio and images. And who knows what will happen when, wow, he's out of control.
No, that's probably not out of control for you, right? It's normal. It's normal. So.
Yeah, I'm 20,000 photos a year of my everyday life. I know no other life,
That's
more
great.
or less.
And what are you up to right now?
Well, I've just wrapped up 2 back-to-back exhibitions at universities in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I got to Finlandia University in the middle of January and did a show there for approximately 3 weeks. And then headed to Northern Michigan University in Marquette, did a show there for approximately 6.
Great.
Yeah.
And your show is called?
They left 150 years ago. It's a commemoration of 150 years since Finns began to move to the United States and Canada.
If someone were to go to one of those exhibits, what would their experience be like?
Well, it's 100% shot inside of the last 5 years, and it looks at both sides of essentially the modern day path of the Finnish bloodline, roughly one half the descendants of the Finns who chose to leave America, leave for America, and one half the Finns, or the descendants thereof, that chose to stay when there was that mass migration circa the 1860s, from which the exhibit gets its name.
Are your subjects, the Finnish subjects in the exhibit, people who actually identify relatives who left? Or are you just assuming that everybody there has that in their past, or many people in Finland have that in their past?
Well, actually, the name of the exhibition came out of my interviewing informally friends who I would try to find out as much as I could before I knew everything about the actual states and counties and cities where most of the migrations landed them. I would ask them, do you have any family there? Do you know anyone I might be able to contact? I think it might be interesting to do a show connected to your fourth cousins. And basically the answer came back the same way every time. Well, they left something like 150 years ago, and pretty much no one's heard from anyone in that bloodline since.
Wow.
And I met very, very few exceptions. One of whom was we still don't know their exact blood relation, but the last name is rare enough that we can pretty well guess they've got something. Before I left to do the exhibition's main shooting, which was about 3 weeks driving from my hometown of Pasadena, California to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and back via the Upper Peninsula, this is at the end of 2012, I had a house party. And it was my going away party, and it was my announcement, essentially, that I was planning to do this very peculiar project involving stopping in towns where I didn't know anybody and looking for signs of Finnishness in America anywhere I could find them. And I asked the 30-ish gathered, let's say 15 of whom were Finnish-born, if they had any relatives I might be able to contact. And then sure enough, a friend by the name of Marianne, Finnish Marianne, sticks up her hand and says she was recently contacted by an American in South Dakota with her last name who was curious to learn as much about his bloodline as possible. And he wrote to every Heppola that he could find on Facebook, and she was one of them. And they'd been, at that time, writing back and forth for a month or so, just by chance. And then she mentions my project to him. He sends her his number. She hands it along to me. And the next thing you know, I've got at least one point on the map I can stop between the LA area and Ann Arbor. And slowly I filled in the others.
I think what's amazing about your project is it's an example for creatives listening to this show of how you might come up with a creative idea or project or piece of art that will turn into a multi-year international journey that you could have never expected. Is that, I mean, did you have any way of knowing when you first had this idea that it was going to turn into such a gigantic project, taking you around the world for years and meeting hundreds of people?
Well, my hope was essentially it would fit into a life I was already living, because essentially I was already based in Finland by that point, and I already was in the routine of coming to America 2 to 4 months a year on one work matter or another. And I thought, well, I'm already taking pictures everywhere I go anyway. There really should be a project that can grow out of this, because if I'm going to both places to show photographs that I've taken in my recent past, why shouldn't the photographs have something to do with the fact that I'm back and forth from America to Finland?
Yeah.
And it slowly grew from that.
Yeah.
I mean, a number of things gave me the spark that led to building it around this commemoration of the sesquicentennial of Finnish migration to the United States.
And that's what people celebrated in 2014, right? Isn't that, like, at least in Minnesota, that was the magic date for 150 years, I think.
Yeah, well, the lovely thing about it is that the migration is technically 60 years long. So when 60 years from 2010 rolls around 2070, I will no longer be able to say they left 150 years ago.
Yeah.
But here we are in 2015. This could go a while.
You titled your presentation with a title that will last a few decades.
Well, I didn't do that math until 6 months or so in, but all the history books that I dug into suggested basically 1860s would have been the spark, and then a sharp slowdown in the 19 teens, ending basically by Prohibition, 1919, 1920.
Did the project you did before the 150 years ago one, what have some of your earlier photography exhibits been like? Were they anything like this? Or is this one like the most momentum you've ever had?
This is easily the most momentum my photographic exhibitions have ever had. The project that I did immediately before it, I loved just as much creatively, and it had another angle. But the project before it was in 2010, and it was called, I'll get to that in a sec. But it was based on the fact that I was getting a lot of comparisons of my work and questioning about my work, asking whether it was actually painting or photography. And I asked a gallerist that I knew, I said, okay, I'm considering having a show at your gallery in the next 18 months. Do you think you could, I said, I'm a photographer who often gets his photographs confused with paintings. Is there any way that you could possibly introduce me to a painter who often gets their work confused with photography?
Wow.
And I didn't pose it as, I won't do the show if you don't find me this painter. But sure enough, he had this quality to his work where if you stand 5-10 feet away, you really cannot, you will question it. You will wonder, did you paint over a photograph? What exactly was your process? And they're beyond photorealistic in many cases, especially from a little bit of distance. So I pitched him on the show idea whereby we'd put a whole handful of his work and my work into a room, and challenge the audience to figure out whose were whose.
Oh, yeah.
And with this in mind, we named the exhibition Squint. Idea being you have to squint to figure out if it's a photograph or a painting, and hence figure out which artist is behind it.
Wow.
So we packed...
and this was in Helsinki?
Yeah, this was the first gallery show I did in Helsinki. And it was at an awesome gallery right beside Parliament. It was a great location. It was, the summer right after I'd met just hundreds of really, really cool people, invited anyone and everyone, and 225 people showed up, and it was this, I won't say tiny, but smallish room, and that was kind of the spark that made me think, well, this is pretty awesome. Everyone completely digs the idea, and wow, they're actually selling. I should probably start pondering what kind of means I can build on all things visual arts in general, because I looked at photography as a really, really enjoyable hobby that could be taken in several different directions. And this is the first, it's not the first in fine arts, but it was the first in what you would call a recognized gallery in a good-sized city. And that gave me the spark of, well, there's, the world's your oyster if you come up with the right idea. And I just started pondering. And the idea for the current exhibition grew out of several trips back and forth from the United States to Finland, and a month I spent in the Finnish National Library trying to learn as much as I could about where Finns landed when they went to North America.
Wow, that's incredible. So when you lived in Helsinki in those earlier days, did you have a day job?
No, I actually freelanced as a photographer. I had a not unimpressive list of contacts that introduced me all around town to ad agencies and such. And they dug what they'd seen of my work, not so much from exhibitions, but before I shot anything in fine arts, I shot for the film production company that I worked for. And that was a nice draw for them because, well, all things Hollywood have obviously a reputation as having some kind of lofty quality to them, and you cross the world and it's that much loftier because they don't get a lot of Pasadenans walking through their ad agency, and least of whom have shot for Sony Pictures Entertainment. So they figured, this person's got a portfolio, he has an angle, and he seems to be enthusiastic about living here, so why not? Wow.
So before you moved to Finland, you were working as a photographer in Hollywood. And you're a local LA person.
Well, to be fair, I was working as a producer in Hollywood, and I turned my company onto the fact that I also had some skill and background with photography.
Wow.
And that grew into other things with that company and beyond. Photograph theater. My first professional work as a photographer was photographing basically garage bands in the LA area right after college.
So when you were in film school, did you already think like the still image was your thing, or were you going to make movies?
I was much more set on movies. I didn't give 5 seconds of thought to taking a dime to photograph or sell a photograph of anything before literally that meeting after college, 2 weeks after graduating. Everything was film school related. I worked for a television director at Warner Brothers Studios. It was my first longer film related job after college. In college, I did an internship with a Titanic producer, and everything was geared toward films and television before then. And presently, I am still working with a project that grew out of a relationship from the last production company where I worked for, the same production company that had the production deal with Sony Pictures Home Entertainment that introduced me to a mountain of people over the course of about a year and a half. So, neither interest has left me in any regard, but before there was any time spent photographing professionally, photography was a hobby going back, by that time, 7 years. Or no, 7 years would have been the first actual non-disposable camera. I got a camera for my 15th birthday. That was the first that was like, that would have been the beginning of carrying a camera everywhere I went. Before that, the occasional disposable cameras for special occasions, but I'd always enjoyed it. And it was just a lovable hobby that grew from there.
What did your parents think of this?
Which phase?
Just as watching you as a kid sort of getting into this, were they surprised or did they encourage you? I mean, they bought you a camera, I guess.
Yeah, they were definitely supportive. It was not any kind of what you would call constant presence in high school at all. It was, okay, the camera's in my pocket, but it wasn't like, photographing my dinner or photographing the TV or whatever it would be that would catch my eye. After college, I got cable in the first place I moved into and was more transfixed by the photographs I'd taken just going to and from work as set to my favorite music of the time than I have ever been by television. Mm-hmm. And I more, basically my knowledge of popular culture as it relates specifically to television is pretty thorough from 1979 to 2001. Then it drops off considerably because literally I was more entertained by not only, gathering pictures from 8-10 months ago and, having these lovely flashbacks of these little things that, some party I'd gone to. You see someone's whatever bowl of salsa next to these chips, or you see 700 graduation hats right before everyone throws them in the air.
Yeah.
And all of these moments just ended up being this kind of way more, it's almost like a journal that you wrote, but it has new meaning when you watch it in concert with other photographs of similar theme. Like I take all the pictures that had the color purple in them going back 2 years, string them all together, turn on Prince's Purple Rain and just watch and see what would happen. And I made all of these tiny little 3 and 4 minute clips based on, okay, let's gather all of the photographs that have 3 things in them and then play the White Stripes, the Big Three Killed My Baby alongside it and see what it looks like, see what kind of, how one photo reminds you of another, see what kind of, how the lyrics speak to the photographs, et cetera, et cetera. And I was way more entertained by this than I was by television.
You were curating a show for
sorts.
yourself, even in those early days.
For my own entertainment, yes. And I showed almost no one for that for 2 to 3 years. I ended up showing my TV director boss. I worked for a TV director who worked on a total of 8 TV series in the 2002-2003 TV season. And I guess it was not the last show, but the show we worked on for the longest. I made a compilation of all of the photographs they didn't particularly know I was taking. I wasn't the authorized photographer, but I was taking pictures of just little accoutrement around the set and set it to music that seemed appropriate for the show, and whatever. They dug it, much like the middle school classmates dug the why did you take that photo of that at that moment kind of stuff. And that was obviously great feedback, is wow, these are actors and cameramen and producers working in television, and they like what they see. So that was beyond motivation enough to land me in the next step, which appropriately enough was hopping a plane to Poland to train to become an English teacher as a backdrop for my TV director boss's ex-wife's idea of building a portfolio of travel photography. She was a travel writer for many years, and she had this idea to build this portfolio in and around Eastern Europe, come back, pitch it to pitch it via her to travel magazines in the United States and see where things would go from there.
So are you saying she wanted to get in the travel agency, or she had that dream for you?
She suggested to me, if this is what you're interested in, this is one path. This is one idea. She'd been writing about trips she'd taken for one of the bigger travel magazines for years. And for whatever reason, I had to, on an errand for that boss, I needed to go meet his ex-wife.
Wow, that's amazing. So it's these little moments of serendipity have really unfolded your life in profound ways.
Yeah. I depended on them to, offer opportunities, not all of which I've taken, but I'd like to think in the last 15 years I've gotten a pretty good sense of the peculiar spark that's going to possibly be a right turn from what I'm doing at that moment that is actually ultimately going to be worthwhile. And yeah, as yet it's worked out swimmingly.
If they drew the path of your travels around the globe on a map, it would be kind of outrageous. A big, giant zigzag of complexity.
Yeah, well, the term zigzag is right there in my Twitter biography of 160 characters. Yeah, zigzagging from Europe since '99 is what it says, among other things. In any case, Finland first landed on my map when I did a study abroad semester in college in Stockholm, Sweden. And that was the spark of that was the first time I ever really felt, I don't know if this camera's going to spend any time in my pocket, I can't stop taking pictures. There's too much here. There's too many cities I've heard about my entire life, too many wild views of architecture, and just too many, just socially, restaurants, parties, classrooms. Everything was just a little different in this ultra fascinating way. And I took hundreds of photographs. Like, it was one of these things where I had to give up on taking everything back with me when I left Sweden, because I developed so many pictures in that time, and I actually had to throw a box, let's say, probably 30 pounds of nothing but photographs I developed there to ship back to where I lived at the time in Connecticut. I visited 14 European capitals from August 99 to January 2000. And those three, Stockholm, Sweden, Helsinki, Finland, and Tallinn, Estonia, stuck with me in a way that beyond the way that the other 11 did.
Well, your Finnish connection is what connected you to me and Dawn. Mm-hmm. And for our listeners, it's kind of amazing to have Jason here, because he has been in this room before, at this kitchen table before. And this is a great example of how being in the arts can connect you to people from across the ocean and people you'd never known before. And you end up sharing major life milestones with them. And so it came to be that Jason spent my 40th birthday with me. And the main person who I celebrated my birthday with on that, you only turn 40 once in your life, and it's such a milestone birthday. And I had met you, I think, 2 days before or 3 days before at the, what was it called? The Sister Cities celebration. Because Minneapolis is the sister city of
Kuopio.
Of Kuopio, right, town in Finland. And so I was there playing Finnish music and connecting with people from the Finnish American community. And you were there. Were you investigating possible subjects for your show, or what were you doing there?
I was probably talking to the American Swedish Institute about bringing the eventual show there.
Oh, yeah.
And made a contact there. And that contact, then invited me to a Swedish midsummer celebration in Minnehaha Park. And that led me to chatting with a handful of their representatives there. We emailed back and forth. I said, this is a project I'm building right now. And she probably sent me an invite for that show.
Yep.
And I would have turned up on the grounds that, hey, probably someone from their committee will be there, and someone from Mexico, and some people from Finland, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so this was like July 17th or something, and
Exactly.
you and I met one another, and you were talking to me about looking for subjects who were connected to their Finnish heritage, because you wanted to shoot pictures of people like that.
Exactly.
And then I volunteered?
Yeah, and when we met, it was probably a short-ish verbal pitch. You just had a performance.
Yep.
And you probably had another one coming, so I would guess our first chat was pretty short.
Yep.
Exchanged email addresses. I would have written to you to say, here's a little bit more about the project. If you're up for this, how's your schedule next week? I've got to leave. I'm doing California in another, 5-ish days. And yeah, we got to talking about whether it would be Tuesday or Wednesday.
And I think I said, well, I'm having my birthday, and that would be a cool thing to capture.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the amazing thing was that day, Dawn went to work like normal, so she was gone. My parents were visiting because my birthday is also their anniversary. And so that meant they could stay with my children. So they got to do grandparent duties, which freed me up to have the day to myself without having to be on parent patrol. And I came and picked you up from your relative's house in South Minneapolis, and I wanted to do a ceremonial event in my life to memorialize my 40th birthday. And so I picked up Jason. We drove to Lake Calhoun. It was a beautiful, sunny, warm day. We parked the car, and I went for a swim in the lake. And this was my idea, and I was going to do this anyway. And I just thought, well, if there's a photographer wanting to document it, that would be cool, because it was my 40th birthday and I was excited about such a milestone birthday. Now, at the time, had you already shot the other lake photograph?
That's what that reminded me of. The reason we chose the Wednesday over the Tuesday, because I remember at first when you said birthday, I thought basically, well, that's kind of not a regular day in your life. I'm looking for basically the most middle of the road kind of day I can find. But then it became clear that it wasn't all family based. It wasn't going to be basically me photographing a birthday party,
right?
Which is just way atypical. It's literally once a year.
Yeah.
You said I'm planning on rewarding myself for turning 40 by having a swim in my local lake. I guess this is Lake Calhoun.
Yeah.
And
wow, so I told you it sounds like I had been planning it for a few days.
That's what I
gathered. And I think I remember that, now that I think about it.
Yeah, so the spark for me on that was that only 1 year previously, 13 months previously, June 2010, I photographed an artist that I know in technically town neighboring Helsinki. And it was a shoot similar, which at the time was not even for the show. The show didn't exist. But I'd been photographing people, following them wherever they went for the better part of their days for some years by that point. And she was the latest amongst those that was going to be put into a portfolio that was going to be taken to prospective clients that I was interested in enticing. And she had this whole day ahead of her. It was hairdresser, visit her mother in the convalescent home, has to pick up flowers, something. As you know, in the midst of a divorce, I'm going to be on the phone with my divorce attorney, if that's okay. I said, Bill, you can rest assured there will be no audio. There might be some unpleasant expressions, but most likely none of these are going to be too terribly revealing for your proceedings in progress. And so she said, but before I get the brunt of the day underway, I'm going to go have a jump in my local lake. And at the time, that was just, okay, I've heard Finns are nuts about the swimming and nuts about the summer and nuts about all things nature. So I followed her to what was, from her place, 3-ish miles, to land at her local bayside. And she jumps in her swimming suit, jumps in the water for under 5 minutes, kind of like you, and jumps back out. Next thing you know, she's dressed basically for business again, and off we go zipping on to other errands. And then you more or less pitched, here's what I'm going to do, as more or less the same thing.
Yeah.
And in this case, I thought, okay, well, this is a no-brainer because
there's no divorce attorney phone call for one.
Worth clarifying. I think it'd be awesome if you were two exes doing a weekly podcast in your kitchen, but as it stands, as far as I know, happily married. In any case, whatever. She mirrored you in this way that made me think, okay, so this project suddenly got interesting because without prompting, they don't know each other. There was no backdoor deal whereby, someone handed you off a sack of cash to go jump in the lake.
And on the other side of it, you're not some photographic mastermind kind of setting up, staging this stuff. No, you're just watching life unfold on two different sides of the ocean.
It would be sociologically criminal to ask anyone to do anything as it relates to documentary photography. So in any case, Followed you to the lake, got the shot that you ended up seeing at least one venue here in Minneapolis just last summer. And yeah, followed you in the car here, and I documented the celebration of your birthday with the two children and with both parents.
Yeah.
And then we wrapped it up at that.
Then we had a family lunch plan. Mm-hmm. But what happened, dear listeners, is that now I am in Jason's exhibit. They left 150 years ago exhibit that he's been taking around the country and just came from Michigan with. Features this image of me swimming in the lake.
Look, your local lake. I cannot tell you how much the adjective of local just elevates that title. Like, everyone should have a local lake. Just like you have a local grocery store or your local park, everyone should have their local lake. Like, that's the one they usually go to. Like, you might go to the other lake or the faraway lake, but
right.
It's important to have your local.
Yeah, and that's true, because local lake also implies that there's many other lakes too.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But this just happens to be the one in your neighborhood.
You could go to the Gelson style lake up the road with the admission charge, or
right.
You could keep it local.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Make sure that your neighborhood gets your
swim local. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I loved that I love that facet of your title.
Well,
that was great.
Both subjects drove under 10 minutes to get to the lake that they ended up doing the swimming at. Well, but to be fair, you picked me up in Longfellow, so our drive would have not been from your place. But in any case,
Yeah.
It's certainly,
Calhoun is still your local lake.
That's my local lake for sure. It's, it is probably, I don't know, less than 2 miles away.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, it was a big honor for me because I've never been in a photography exhibit before. So that in alone was very cool. And the fact that it was documenting my 40th birthday was really cool. And then the fact that it was connecting Finland to America was very profound. And I just think it's so exciting to be a part of that. So here you are, a photographer. I didn't know you at all. I had just met you a few days before. Our conversation was about 5 minutes. We had a couple emails, and now I'm preserved in this show that's being shown in art galleries and colleges around the country, and probably in Finland as well, and showing up. I mean, it was just a great thing for me to be a part of, and I'm so glad that you asked me to be a part of it and that I got to be a part of it. And now it's just been so fun to watch you as one of your subjects, to watch you take your work around the world and show this stuff. I mean, it's just amazing. And one of the things that I think is so exciting about your artistic life is how you are a real go-getter when it comes to the media and when it comes to the press and TV and radio, and I really relate to that because as a rock musician, I don't know very many photographers, but you seem to live your life the way a rock band does. You treat photography like a touring rock band. You go on tour, you relocate to different cities, you sleep on people's couches, and you do radio interviews and get on television. And I mean, it feels so relatable to me because that's how I live my artistic life. And I don't know, do you see yourself as sort of doing it different than most photographers do? As kind of an on-the-road punk rock indie photographer?
I can't say I've framed it in juxtaposition to any other photographers, but I know that I'm a huge fan of traveling, and I know that my photography gets more diverse and dynamic via traveling.
Yeah.
So I know that if I can build exhibitions around going from place to place, and in the case of this show, every place I take it, I find more Finnish Americans to photograph, hence being able to offer the next venue brand new material that the previous venue didn't have showing in their space. And it just fit together. I mean, there's people design their paths around things they like and things they don't like. Alfred Hitchcock couldn't stand his mom. Every Alfred Hitchcock movie, whether the character is immediately connected to him or not, the mother is always evil and terrible. And Hitchcock didn't like birds. Birds never played a nice role in a Hitchcock movie, et cetera, et cetera. That was, the kind of thing I'd pick up in film school where it was like, oh, okay, so people's work reflected just personal preferences.
Yeah.
If Hitchcock hadn't liked cheese, some characters would have died of food poisoning from cheese at some point. And for me, I like traveling.
Yeah.
So if I can integrate travel into the work, it's a complete no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's fun. It builds the works, again, the dynamic aspect of it. And it's a story in itself. The fact that it's, I'm going back and forth, and the fact that, I moved to Helsinki 7-ish years ago. And it all wraps up into one very enjoyable, rather marketable package.
Yeah. Well, that's the marketing part is interesting to me. And it, like you mentioned before, when you were in Helsinki doing freelance photography, you found like you could get work because you were an American who'd worked in Los Angeles. And I've found that as a musician, it's way easier to book gigs in a distant city because you can say, oh, yeah, I'm from Minneapolis or I'm from Chicago and I'm on tour. And then all of a sudden, there's a credibility factor that comes with that. Whereas, like, if you just stay home and try to book stuff locally, it's like, who cares? I mean, do you think that's true for you?
Ask me if I've ever had a show in my hometown. It's not for lack of trying. It's 100% correct. I've heard the same from comedians have said the same. Adam Carolla says that he tours the country, even he tours little bits of England here and there. He says the shows with the weakest turnout are basically in and around North Hollywood, California, where he grew up.
Yeah.
So there's this, it's you kind of aspect to your backyard. It could be debate in my existence. No one in Pasadena, California ever sees a single photograph I take.
Well, I think this is a great lesson for people listening. If you make art that is publicly showable, like either in a gallery or in a concert or in a lecture, art that requires people to come and hear it, boy, if a good idea might be for you to find the most distant city where you have an aunt or uncle or friend living and pitch your art there, where you can go and stay for free with your friend or relative and do the show there, because chances of you getting the gig are probably way better.
Because you're the out-of-town artist.
Absolutely.
Right.
And that has totally been the story of my entire music career. I am on the road. I'm an on-the-road touring artist because that's where I get gigs, where people actually pay me, invite me, and are interested. And I almost never play in the cities where I live, and it's so true about Minneapolis. I haven't played Minneapolis for a year and a half.
Well, okay.
But I've been all over the country in that time, know. So that's a great lesson, I think, for those of you artists. If you're making art and you've never left your hometown and you're frustrated because you can't get showings or you can't get gigs, take this as a word of encouragement to visit a friend or relative in a distant place and book a gig, because that's, I don't know, it's worked for me and it's worked for you.
Yeah, I mean, my first art show was within 40 miles of where I grew up, but really that grew out of, I was lucky enough, I was doing this, interestingly enough, and that shoot changed. It was one of those other kind of bellwether, total life-changing shoots, photographing an actress that I used to work with on a sitcom shot for Warner Brothers Studios.
Can you say which one it is?
I was thinking that as I gave that really tentative response,
it's
tiptoeing
okay,
around it. No, whatever. It's the Drew Carey Show.
Okay.
If anything that you can find through Google, I'm not going to tiptoe around like it didn't exist. If you put my name into IMDb, scroll to the bottom, you're going to see the Drew Carey Show at the bottom. Okay. Among the other shows.
Ooh, I've never looked at your IMDb. Now I'm excited to go check it out.
I invite you. So in any case, yeah, the first art show grew out of, I was building this portfolio that I wanted to show to some of the film producer colleagues that I had at the time to basically pitch them on, hire me to be the still photographer on your next show. Yeah, basically the friend I'd kept in touch with from working on the Drew Carey Show, who, if you watch the show, she played the woman who tended bar at Drew Carey's and Drew Carey's friends' hangout on the Drew Carey Show. It's called the Warsaw. And she and I, spent a cumulative let's say 25 hours chatting on the sidelines of the Drew Carey show when she wasn't due to be on camera, and we stayed in touch. And then I met her bright and early. That was still to this day, one of the longest shoots I've ever done. It was about 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. going wherever she would go. And the end of her day, it started with this, she begins her day with meditating. And then we went on a couple of errands, and then we make our way to the hair salon in immediately adjacent to Beverly Hills where I worked, where the fellow running it, and he says, "Oh, so are you, a friend of hers? Are you what?" He was into her at the time, plain as day. And slowly we got around to, I work for this production company in Beverly Hills, and I'm now building a portfolio. Our mutual contact and I used to work on one of the TV shows that she worked on together. And sure enough, I'm now following her through a regular day in her life. And that led to him asking, "Okay, so you getting any good pictures?" And I said, "Yeah, I suppose some of them are coming along okay." And he says, "Well, do you want to send me some of them to see what?" I wouldn't mind catching a look, because for him, it's like he was a flirtatious guy in general, and he was interested to see the photographs taken of this haircut and these shots of him looking longingly into her eyes as he blow dries her hair, and her hair blowing in the air in the meantime. And he says, additionally, "Well, I do the occasional art exhibition in my space. I've got this big hall right behind us, and it's room enough for a good amount of artwork. If I like the photos you send, I wouldn't mind giving you an art show." And I said, "Oh, well, yeah, I didn't really think of it one way or the other as being something I'd be wild about at the time, but for me it was, if someone wants to see photographs I'm taking, why would I turn them down?" And sure enough, he gets back to me after sending them a couple of days later and says, I like your style, because I sent some other things that I'd shot recently. And he said, "If you want to do an art show here, please feel free." And at that time, I hadn't given 5 seconds of thought to fine art as an avenue for my work. I'd given thought to things more closely related to narrative via photographs. Mm-hmm. And this was the first thought I had of printing photographs and hanging them on a wall.
In the chain of events you're describing, from the Beverly Hills salon to the gallery opportunity to all that stuff, it reminds me of a little life lesson that I have in my own mind, which is every gig leads to another gig. And that's how I found my music career to be, where I feel like even if I'm playing a gig where there's not very many people in the audience, or there's no fee, or the fee is low, or it seems like, this is sort of a waste of time, I always tell myself mentally, every gig leads to another gig, because that's proven true so often in the 25 years that I've been playing music, where even in the moments where you think, is this gig even worth it? Somebody will be in the audience. Someone will email you after the fact. You'll learn something, see something, make a personal connection, and maybe a month or a year or 10 years later, it unfolds and you get another gig out of it.
Absolutely.
And that really seems to be your life, the story of your life as a photographer.
Most of these steps, most of what's moved from place to place and opportunity to opportunity it's too interesting not to do. Someone opens a door to the hair salon guy says, I cut actresses hair for $200, $300, $400, $500 a pop. The audience that entails is who knows who. It's the producer date that they're going to drag to the opening to that thing. In my case, it was the cinematographer brought by a colleague of mine at the time who went to that exhibition, who ended up being the first person to buy one of my photographs, who was oddly enough from Poland. And we had this nice chat in Polish at the exhibition. And at the time, I had no idea what anyone was going to think. I knew I liked them. I knew the printer was strong enough to do the work justice, but I didn't think of it in a how will this compare to other fine art kind of category. And when a cinematographer who's done movies you've heard of says, not only do I want that photograph, I want it before I ask you what the price is, and I'm going to hang it in my office where because he had me come over to visit him to deliver the photograph, and we go from place to place, and we end up in this alarmingly fitting spot in his office, and literally I'm looking at posters of Star Trek on the wall, Star Trek the movie. He did several of them, or at least one or two of them, and he shot documentaries for Spielberg in Poland, and I was like, this guy likes this photograph of my friend's towel hanging on the back of his bathroom door. Okay, and this is a professional endeavor. Like, this is the strangest opportunity anyone's ever thrown my way. And then when it came to, well, are you going to do another art exhibition? Well, if a Steven Spielberg cinematographer says, your work interests me, are you going to do another photography exhibition? Of course. So many of these opportunities have been, well, that's a really weird thing to do next. You're going to jump on a plane to X. You're going to, drive across the country to do Y. To me, it's irresistibly compelling to do.
Yeah.
It's not. You could call it the inspiration to do it could be the art end of it, but it's like, as a photographer who, again, works in a medium where there's no limit to how much output I can draw from my everyday surroundings, these opportunities are not small with regard to what artistically could grow out of them. So there's just a mountain of them, just beyond irresistible. So I go on the grounds that it would feel ridiculous not to, more or less.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask about the impact of travel on creativity, because I know for my own life too, if I go on a serious trip overseas or a serious trip in the United States or just any interesting geographic change, boy, that's inspired a lot of music in my catalog, in my repertoire,
sure,
and has refreshed my mind for new ideas. And certainly that seems to be a driving force in your work as well. And so, again, for those of you listening, boy, if you're feeling like you're having a moment of writer's block or creative block, or you're just feeling out of gas or out of inspiration, it seems to me one of the best things you could do is buy a plane ticket to just about anywhere, right? And get the heck out of your town and your house and go somewhere, and maybe the weirder or the more exotic, the better. Would you agree with that?
I mean, plane ticket makes all the sense in the world, but literally, there's no place you can be where 100 miles away isn't pretty different.
Yeah.
There's if you're talking here, I guess it would be like, I don't know, Stillwater or something like this. You can bet your everyday surroundings from Minneapolis are not going to be identical to that town 25 towns away, in such a way where you're going to have a different day. You're going to have lunch at a place that doesn't even exist in your town. You're going to find ways to entertain yourself that are different from how you would there, and the thoughts that happen in the course of that kind of endeavor, they will not be the thoughts you would have had on some other Saturday.
Yeah.
And if you're in a medium where your thoughts lead to your next output, it's a total no-brainer.
Yeah.
Dawn, what do you think is going on in the brain? Do you have any ideas about that?
Well, probably because you can't go into your routines of the directions of driving and what you're going to eat and who you're going to see and what your activities are. It's sort of, I think the idea of novelty, makes your brain do different things than when you're in the pathways of experience that are already sort of burned into your neurons.
Sure. I mean, if you're a visual artist, it's this is how my surroundings in general look. 100 miles from here, they don't look like this. This, whatever I may see, if it's the napkin holder at that independent Mexican place that doesn't exist in my hometown, it's a little shinier and it's a little closer to, the bathroom than it is in the Mexican place in my hometown. That could turn into it for a painter, a painting, for a photographer, a photograph, whatever that thing is, what makes you go, that's kind of funny. That's largely what gets me to drag the camera from spot to spot to spot, is that I don't want to need to run to the car or need to even run from the living room to my bedroom to grab it when that moment of whatever it is happens.
Yeah.
How I see that thing when I see it is inevitably the way that it's most powerfully captured. Every time I've needed to run even a minute and a half to go grab a camera and come back, it's just not as good as the shots that come out of the moment I see it.
Can you say a little bit about when you go to, especially if it's a new city to you, or if it's a city that you are sort of returning to, what are some of your favorite things to do to start to get to know a new city, or what are things you like to do?
That's that's the brilliant thing about travel. You're still human when you turn up, so you need a place to lay your head and you need a place to eat. That's it. I'm not kidding. I cannot tell you how few times I've shown up with a travel brochure and said, I need to turn up to the, state capitol building of Vermont because I'm told it's a thing of great beauty and I want to capture it with my camera. No, there's a taco place down the block. Yeah, okay. Let's go get Mexican food. And then it's on the way to the taco place. Hey, is that the state capitol? Oh yeah, how about that? And then sure enough, whether the state capitol makes it into the portfolio to follow or exhibition to follow or not, you don't need to seek out, you don't need to seek out the thing that everyone else finds ultra attractive. I literally got to London. I was on a kick of all of my best photographs are coming out of these offbeat, out-of-the-way situations. I got to a friend from London while I was in school said, yeah, come check out London for this weekend you have off. And I literally told him, Buckingham Palace, not so interested. Do you have a nice Mexican place anywhere nearby?
I'm seeing a theme here.
I'm using it as a motif because
yes.
It seems to fit. Because whatever, while traveling, you're no different than who you were when you left. You have the same cravings, same interests, same everything. For me, it's art exhibitions and it's live music if I can find it, and it's tacos. And I need not guide myself in any more artistically minded way than going where one would go in the pursuit of, again, shelter and food and maybe live music. And yeah, generally speaking, I've not had to seek out anything. It's just going from place to place. That's what I've essentially been leaning my whole existence toward. That's how an exhibition that's one part Finland, one part America grew out of, because I was already going from Finland to America. Why shouldn't there be something created out of this fact? And sure enough, that's where the show that is now going from America to Finland and back grew out of. So it's, in a way, I have a cousin who's an artist, actually, and interestingly enough, he's local to the Twin Cities, who he offered the philosophy. He said, basically, when you start, it's going to be a hobby, and it's going to be that thing that you find fun. Then you're going to find something resembling an audience for what you do, and then slowly there's going to be larger bodies that are going to take notice of what you do, and eventually you're just going to be essentially charging people for you're living your everyday life. You're doing the things you're already interested in doing. If I wasn't in Marquette, Michigan in a museum, I might be driving through Marquette, Michigan on the grounds that, this is supposed to be the most Finnish town in the United States in this regard, or the most Finnish town of this size in the United States. I would be there anyway. So for me, it's, if there's an art venue with whatever, a photograph I've taken that's plastered all over town and a party being held in my honor when I arrive, then that doesn't seem like such a bad thing. So
it's a good gig.
It's built into a path I've been a fan of, just as a fan of travel from the beginning.
Did you find with the 150 exhibit that people wanted to tell you their story about the relatives they knew or that they didn't know, or just that they wanted to start a conversation with you? And what was that like? And, in a way, to be the holder of those stories is a pretty powerful thing. Can you share a little bit about what stories you heard?
Sure. Inevitably, there would, to break it down, it's been shown so far in 3 cities in Finland and 4 cities in the United States. And inevitably, in either place, I would meet someone from the other side. Americans would pop into the Finnish exhibition with having come mostly from the Great Lakes region. And, and I would say just as many cases as not, they didn't know this show existed per se under this theme. They came for the show in the next room and just happened to run into it. And yeah, they lend their whatever background they may have, and I would say there's far more Americans pretty well aware of what their Finnish ancestors were up to, which part of the country they lived in, what profession they worked in there, which profession they worked in when they got here, et cetera, then vice versa. As I said, the title of the show came out of the fact that none of the Finns I spoke to, or barely any, had any idea. They left 150 years ago, and we don't know what happened after that. But inevitably as well, I'd meet Finns, actual Finnish-born Finns in Marquette and Hancock, and they would share, they're not expecting to run into an American shooting Finland in this way, because, it's one of the things I'm able to lend to the theme is that I take note of things for photographs that Finns themselves find too commonplace to find interesting. There's one of the motifs that's to grab me from place to place is this way that circa wintertime, people will leave someone will have a mitten fall out of their pocket. Let's say snowy day in January, February, and it falls on the ground. Someone else comes along and finds the mitten and then places it in some kind of elevated position so that the people see it when they ideally come back looking for their lost mitten when they're cold. And I shot that in Finland for a good long while before doing this exhibition, just finding, that's nice. I never saw the person doing the actual mitten lifting, but you could pretty well tell someone had set it there for that purpose. And then another one of these sparks, much like the local lake, was stopping in Seattle for a couple of days and walking around this apparently very Nordic neighborhood called Ballard.
Yeah.
And I see this mitten hanging on this sandwich board advertising a local gym. And I thought, clearly I've made it to the most Finnish corner of the Pacific Northwest because they do the same thing. Finns say to me, we would never dream of photographing that because that's all we know. That's our entire existence has been gloves in elevated positions waiting for the owner to come back to find them. Coming from California, where go ahead and leave a can of soda on the sidewalk and then come back 25 minutes later, it's not going to be there. And it's not going to be in an elevated position left by someone who hopes you'll find it when you come back. You can leave a dish rag in the same spot, and no, it will not be in an elevated position. When you return, it'll just be gone. So when I got to Finland and saw these gloves hung for this purpose of the owner finding them, I was like, what an adorable society. They'll leave the gloves so that they don't want it. They're not going to use it for, kindling for their fire. Yeah. They're not going to try it on, see if it fits them and matches their jacket and wear it home. They're going to leave it with the hopes of the rightful owner coming back to find it. That's great. So I shot, 20 or 30 of these, 4-ish of them are in the exhibition now. And then every time I would find one, and whether it was Seattle or Marquette or, central Massachusetts, that would end up in the exhibition and they'd go side by side, illustrating here are these places that all of these, so many Finns statistically are known to have landed. And guess what? They have all the same habits. And sure enough, I won't say all of the same habits. There's obviously things that have become more American that have infused the culture. But in any case, so many of these basics are still around.
Yeah.
California, Southern California, not such a Finnish area. Try finding your mitten 5 minutes after you walked away.
That's good.
There's a lot to do to compile them because I have a lot of mittens to scroll through over the course of 7 or 8 years.
Well, did you say you take 20,000 pictures a year?
Of my everyday life. So that's non-gigs. That's
okay.
That's tacos.
And is that about 60 a day? I was trying to do the math in my head. Is that
Here's a calculator.
50, 60 a day? We'll do the math.
We're going to do the math just for fun.
Yeah, I've only ever done the year.
But while Don figures that out, Jason, can you tell our listeners how you would like to be found online? If people want to see your show, see your work, or be in touch with you on social media or your website?
Sure.
54.7 pictures a day.
Good guess on the 60.
So that amounts to many more days of 200 followed by days of 10 than it does 54 a day.
There's some variability there, but on average.
I probably don't go 48 hours without taking a photograph under too many circumstances, but certainly 24 happens on an occasional basis. So as far as the best way to find me...
Yeah. You're on Twitter?
Yeah.
Is it Falcon Photo?
No, it is...
Falcon Photo is your Facebook presence.
One at a time, I suppose. Facebook is falcon-photo.com. That is also my website. I would say the most active feeds are on Facebook and on Twitter. Twitter is at falphocom, FALPHOCOM. And I'm sure just punching in my name must bring it up as well. And then just recently I started a Tumblr blog that is, because I don't love Facebook as a way to upload new work. I like it as a way to upload news. I am on Tumblr just under Jason DeBose. It's one word, JASONDEBOSE. And I've been uploading shots from the present day as contrasted with shots from the past over the course of only now just 2 months. And that's been enjoyable. It's a much less, I would say, competitive community, maybe a more artistic community this way. But I really do like Facebook for uploading new news, new interviews, as the case may be.
Sure.
And in terms of finding out what I'm up to the minute, safely Facebook and Twitter are the most efficient means.
Great. The question that we ask all of our guests is, what would you tell your kindergarten self if you could go back in time?
Oh, right. I remember this from... I insisted on getting a sample of the show before I came on. I really liked the... what would you tell little Richard? A couple of episodes ago.
Yeah.
Guy happened to be named Richard, but that was entertaining. But in any case, what would I tell... What age are we talking?
Kindergarten. 5.
Kindergarten.
5 turning 6. Yes.
I would say keep and make copies of everything artistic you ever do.
Wow.
You don't know how it's going to inspire you later, and you don't know how much you could find it analyzing yourself as an inspiration to what you're doing at the time. And as it relates to photographs, definitely leave record, memory card, God forbid, CD, and I go back to zip drives and such, but never presume that you're in a good position to leave your entire stock of, whether that's writing or, writing, because I write about things in my life in a way similar to the way that I store photographs. I would say never leave any of those things in a position where they're in someone else's hands, in a way where there's no copy and there's no recourse if you pop by that contact's place later and they say, what box of notebooks or which sack of memory cards are you referring to right now?
Yeah.
And so I'm lucky enough to have lost very little on a permanent basis. If I were to advise this very young version of me, it would be, if you're turning out anything you're remotely proud of, make sure there's a way to get a hand on it on down the line.
Yeah. So protect your intellectual property from the start. Those are good words. Those are,
Sure. That goes, it's even more elementary than protect it from Facebook and the rest of them are protected from encroachment. It's protected from it leaving your hands, because photographs completely irreplaceable. No matter how much you may think that building or that taco place did not change in the time since you were last there, it has changed.
Yeah.
There's going to be a little bit of extra rust on that napkin holder, and it's not going to have the same sheen as the first time you shot it. You cannot replace photographs to a factor of 100%. You can replace them to a 95 or a 92 if it's a very, very uniform, like I'm going to go photograph the Washington Monument. It's going to look very similar to the last time you were there. But any less monumental than that, you can bet that thing is going to change. So the moment you capture it, whether that's photography or painting or sculpture or otherwise, that has been captured in a way that was real to A, that moment, and B, real to who you were as an artist at that time. Yeah. And you won't have another chance. Treat it like it's the treasure that it is.
Yeah.
Wow. Great stuff, Jason. This was really cool. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And thanks for being a part of my life story and for putting me in your work. Thanks for listening. See you later.